Pottery was produced in enormous quantities in ancient Rome, mostly for utilitarian purposes. It is found all over the former Roman Empire and beyond. Monte Testaccio is a huge waste mound in Rome made almost entirely of broken amphora used for transporting and storing liquids and other products. In this case probably mostly Spanish olive oil, which was landed nearby, and was the main fuel for lighting, as well as its use in the kitchen and washing in the baths. It is usual to divide Roman domestic pottery broadly into coarse wares and fine wares, the former being the everyday pottery jars, dishes and bowls that were used for cooking or the storage and transport of foods and other goods, and in some cases also as tableware, and which were often made and bought locally. Fine wares were serving vessels or tableware used for more formal dining, and are usually of more decorative and elegant appearance. Some of the most important of these were made at specialized pottery workshops, and were often traded over substantial distances, not only within, but also between, different provinces of the Roman Empire. For example, dozens of different types of British coarse and fine wares were produced locally. Yet many other classes of pottery were also imported from elsewhere in the empire. The manufacture of fine wares such as terra sigillata took place in large workshop complexes that were organized along industrial lines and produced highly standardized products that lend themselves well to precise and systematic classification. There is no direct Roman equivalent to the artistically central vase painting of ancient Greece, and few objects of outstanding artistic interest have survived, but there is a great deal of fine tableware, and very many small figures, often incorporated into oil lamps or similar objects, and often with religious or erotic themes. Roman burial customs varied over time and space, so vessels deposited as grave goods, the usual source of complete ancient pottery vessels, are not always abundant, though all Roman sites produce plenty of broken potsherds. Fine, rather than luxury pottery is the main strength of Roman pottery, unlike Roman glass, which the elite often used alongside gold or silver tableware, and which could be extremely extravagant and expensive. It is clear from the quantities found that fine pottery was used very widely in both social and geographic terms. The more expensive pottery tended to use relief decoration, usually molded, rather than color, and often copied shapes and decoration from the more prestigious metalwork. Especially in the Eastern Empire, local traditions continued, hybridizing with Roman styles to varying extents. From the 3rd century the quality of fine pottery steadily declined, partly because of economic and political disturbances, and because glassware was replacing pottery for drinking cups. Fired clay or terracotta was also widely employed in the Roman period for architectural purposes, as structural bricks and tiles, and occasionally as architectural decoration, and for the manufacture of small statuettes and lamps. These are not normally classified under the heading pottery by archaeologists, but the terracottas and lamps will be included in this article. Pottery is a key material in the dating and interpretation of archaeological sites from the Neolithic period onwards, and has been minutely studied by archaeologists for generations. In the Roman period, ceramics were produced and used in enormous quantities, and the literature on the subject, in numerous languages, is very extensive. Fine wares. Terra sigillata or red glasswares. The designation fine wares is used by archaeologists for Roman pottery intended for serving food and drink at table, as opposed to pots designed for cooking and food preparation, storage, transport and other purposes. Although there were many types of fine pottery, for example, drinking vessels in very delicate and thin-walled wares, and pottery finished with vitreous lead glazes, the major class that comes first to mind is the Roman red glassware of Italy and Gaul, made and widely traded from the 1st century BC to the late 2nd century AD, and traditionally known as terra sigillata. These vessels have fine, fairly hard and well-fired buff to pink fabrics, with a naturally glossy surface slip ranging in color from light orange to quite a bright red. The variations in the color and texture of both body fabric and slip, as well as the vessel shapes and the designs on the decorated forms, can enable a trained student to identify source, date and often individual workshop quite accurately. Aretine ware, made at Arezzo in Tuscany, was the preeminent type of fine pottery in the 1st century BC and early 1st century AD, and was succeeded by Samian ware, manufactured in a number of centres in Gaul, modern France and Germany. However, the definition of all these terms has varied and evolved over the many generations during which the material has been studied. Technically, red glasswares have much in common with earlier Greek painted pottery, but the decorated forms employ raised relief decoration rather than painting. African red slipware belong to the same tradition, and continue to be made much later than Italian and Gaulish sigillata, right through to the Islamic conquest. Ars in turn influenced the production of Vassil and red slip, which is common in the eastern Mediterranean and also appeared occasionally as far west as southern France and Britain. The production of related types of wares existed in Asia Minor and in other eastern regions of the empire, while the Iberian provinces also had local industries producing terra sigillata hispanica, which had some similarities with the Gaulish products. Most of these wares were widely distributed and produced on an industrial scale, and undoubtedly using a high degree of specialization within the workshops. The names of many potters and factory owners are known from the potter's marks frequently applied to fine wares, and can be highly informative. Cnaeus Attius was an especially prominent producer at Arezzo, but wares with his stamps can be shown by modern analysis of their clay to have been produced in Pisa in Tuscany, and at branch factories at both Lyon and La Grau-Fasinc in modern France. However, the interpretation of name stamps can be more complex than it appears at first sight. Bold name stamps visible in decorated areas advertise the name of the factory, but the names of individual artisans working within the pottery, the bowl makers, appear on plain vessels, while the molds for decorated bowls were also sometimes signed freehand by the mold makers, and their signatures also sometimes appear on finished vessels. Theoretically, a decorated vessel might bear the mold maker's name, that of the bowl maker or finisher, and the brand name of the factory in the decoration. The use of slave labor in the Italian workshops is unproven, though some names are certainly of liberty. The site of La Grau-Fasinc in South Gaul, near Millau, has been extensively studied and excavated. Its products had an immensely wide distribution in the later 1st century AD, and sherds have been found from India to the Sudan and Scotland. In 1895, the German scholar Hans Dragendorf produced a classification of vessel shapes in Roman red gloss pottery that is still used. Other scholars added to his numbered forms, and some archaeologists working on the products of specific manufacturing sites, or the finds from important excavations, initiated their own typologies, so that there are now many other classification systems for Aretine and Samian, as there are, indeed, for other classes of Roman pottery, such as the Hayes numbers for African red slip forms. Other numbering systems used with Italian and Gaulish sigillata include those of Deichlet, Knorr, Kurl, Walters, Loschka, Ritterling and Ludovici, to name but a few. The most common method of making relief decoration on the surface of an open terra sigillata vessel was to throw a pottery bowl whose interior profile corresponded with the desired form of the final vessel's exterior. The internal surface was then decorated using individual positive stamps, usually themselves are made of fired clay, or small wheels bearing repeated motifs, such as the ovolo design that often formed the upper border of the decoration. Details could also be added by hand with a stylus. When the decoration was complete and intaglio on the interior, the mold was dried and fired in the usual way, and was subsequently used for shaping bowls. As the bowl dried, it shrank sufficiently to remove it from the mold, after which the finishing processes were carried out. such as the shaping or addition of a foot ring and the finishing of the rim. The details varied according to the form. The completed bowl could then be slipped, dried again, and fired. Closed forms, such as jugs and jars, were seldom decorated in relief using molds, though some vessels of this type were made at La Graufassink by making the upper and lower parts of the vessel separately in molds and joining them at the point of widest diameter. Relief decoration of tall vases or jars was usually achieved by using molded applique motifs or barbotine decoration. The latter technique was particularly popular at the East Gaulish workshops of Rheinzabin, and was also widely used on other pottery types. Plain sigillator table vessels, which included large platters, shallow dishes in several sizes, slightly deeper bowls, and small cups, were made on the wheel using a range of templates to create very precise profiles. The sizes were also standardized, which would have facilitated the firing, storage and transport of the huge numbers that were made. The evolution in forms matches in many respects that seen in silver and glass table vessels of the same periods, and the precise forms can sometimes be closely dated. The forms archaeologically classified as plain do sometimes bear decoration of a simple kind, often in the form of a ring of rouletting within the flat interior base of a dish. Plain wares also often bear name stamps. Ars ware was the most widely distributed representative of the sigillator tradition in the late Roman period, and similar forms and fabrics were made for more local distribution in Egypt, which had its own very active and diverse ceramic traditions in the Roman period. A wide range of bowls, dishes and flagons were made in Ars, but the technique of making entire relief-decorated vessels in molds was discontinued. Instead, applique motifs were frequently used where decoration in relief was required, separately made and applied to the vessel before drying and firing. Stamped motifs were also a favored form of decoration, and in the later centuries, Christian subjects and symbols often appear. A South Gaulish Samian bowl of form Dr. 37, late 1st century AD. Central Gaulish Samian vessel, Dr. 30, with the name stamp of Divixtus. Late 2nd century AD. Display of South Gaulish Samian plain vessels, illustrating standardization of size. Central Gaulish Samian vessel with cut glass decoration. Other fine wares. Some of the shapes of Aretine plain wares were quite closely copied in the later 1st century BC and early 1st century AD in a class of pottery made in northeast Gaul and known as Gallo-Belgic ware. Many of these plates and dishes in red-slipped and black-slipped fabrics bear potter's stamps. Other fine, thin-walled flagons, drinking beakers, bowls and dishes were made locally in most regions of the Roman Empire, including frontier provinces such as Britain. For example, Romano-British colour-coated wares made at Colchester and in the Nene Valley belong to that classification. Several of the pots to the right of the group photograph in the lead section of this article are Nene Valley wares, including the large black beaker decorated with a lively hunting scene of hounds and hares in the barbotine technique. Many decorative techniques were used to beautify pottery tableware, including the use of colored slips, painting, and various textured surfaces. Painted decoration did not, however, continue the Greek and Etruscan traditions as a specialized technique used for elaborate luxury tablewares, though simpler painted designs do appear on many pottery types, both coarse and fine, throughout the empire. The dividing lines between fine and coarse wares, or tablewares and cooking wares, become a little blurred in the case of some of the local, provincial products, because pottery is often multi-purpose. Lead glazed pottery was made in many regions of the Roman Empire, including Gaul, Italy and the eastern provinces. This type of vitreous glaze was most often used for small, decorative items of tableware, including mold-made cups with relief decoration, lamps and zoomorphic containers. The glazes vary in color from amber to brown and many shades of green. Tableware made of Egyptian faience, glazed in vivid blue, turquoise or green, continued to be manufactured in Egypt throughout the Roman period, and the shapes of some of these faience vessels in the 1st century BC and 1st century AD were directly influenced by Aretine ware. Very elaborate, decorated polychrome faience vessels were also produced. Egyptian faience, frit or glazed composition, as it is often termed by Egyptologists, has rather more in common technically with glass manufacture than with earthenware, since it is a non-clay ceramic material. The dividing line between pottery vessels and terracotta figurines is another that is not always sharp, since certain types of small container, such as oil pourers, were sometimes molded in representational forms. Romano-British beaker with barbotine decoration depicting chariot racing. Central Gaulish relief decorated lead glazed flagon. 1st century AD. A late Roman painted beaker made in Britain. Terra Nigra relief decorated vase from Cologne.